The massive alien warship drifted through the black emptiness of space like a metal mountain. Its hull stretched for miles, covered in weapon ports and armor plating that gleamed under the distant stars. Inside the ship, hundreds of creatures worked at control stations, their blue-scaled hands moving across glowing panels. Commander Zixtal stood on the bridge of the Cosmic Dominion, his forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the screens around him. His yellow eyes scanned the displays showing empty space ahead. For 3 months, his fleet had been patrolling this sector of the galaxy, looking for new worlds to add to the Zephyrian Empire. So far, they had found nothing but dead rocks and gas clouds. "Commander," called out one of his officers from across the bridge, "we're picking up something strange on the long-range sensors." Zixtal walked over to the sensor station, his heavy boots clicking on the metal floor. The officer, a young Zephyrian named Telvis, pointed at his screen with one of his clawed fingers. "There's a small ship approaching our position," Telvis said. "It's moving very fast, but the design doesn't match anything in our database." Zixtal leaned closer to look at the display. A tiny blip was moving toward them at incredible speed. The computer showed estimated size and mass readings that made him frown. The ship was barely larger than one of their scout vessels, yet it was traveling faster than anything he had ever seen. "How fast?" Zixtal asked. "Nearly twice the speed of our fastest interceptors," Telvis replied, his voice filled with confusion. "That should be impossible for a ship that size." Zixtal straightened up and looked around the bridge. His crew was staring at the displays with worried expressions. In their 1,000 years of galactic conquest, the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered a species with technology that could surprise them. Every race they had met used slower, weaker ships that were easily defeated. "Send a message to Admiral Korthvan," Zixtal ordered. "Tell him we have an unknown contact approaching." Meanwhile, 3 sectors away, Admiral Korthvan received the message aboard his flagship, the Stellar Crusher. The massive Zephyrian was reviewing reports from other patrol fleets when the communication came through. He read it twice before calling his senior staff to the command center. "Unknown ship," Admiral Korthvan said to his officers. "In this sector, our scouts reported no civilized worlds within 50 light years." "Perhaps it's a refugee ship," suggested Captain Mordock, the Admiral's second-in-command. "Some species try to flee when they hear our empire is coming." Admiral Korthvan nodded slowly. "Or it could be a spy from one of the rebel groups. Either way, we need to investigate. Order the fleet to move toward Commander Zixtal's position." Back on the approaching human ship, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the stars through the main view screen. The Liberty's Edge was not much to look at from the outside. It had started life as a mining vessel, designed to crack open asteroids and extract valuable metals. But over the past 5 years, human engineers had quietly transformed it into something much more dangerous. "Captain," said Lisa Parker from the engineering station, "I'm reading massive energy signatures ahead. Multiple ships, all of them huge." Jake turned to look at his engineer. Lisa was young, maybe 25, but she had been working on spaceship engines since she was 16. If she said the ships ahead were big, they were probably bigger than anything humanity had ever built. "How many ships?" Jake asked. "At least 30, Lisa replied, checking her readings again. "Maybe more. They're all clustered together, like they're waiting for something." Sam Rodriguez, the ship's navigator, looked up from his station. "Captain, should we change course? We could go around them." Jake thought for a moment. The Liberty's Edge was supposed to be on a peaceful exploration mission, looking for new worlds the humans could colonize. They had been traveling for 6 months, moving deeper into space than any human had gone before. Meeting alien ships had always been a possibility, but Jake had hoped it would happen under better circumstances. No, Jake decided. We came out here to explore and make contact with other species. This might be our chance. Amy, can you send them a message? Amy Johnson, the communications officer, nodded and began working at her station. She was the youngest member of the crew, at only 23, but she spoke 7 different languages and had studied every form of communication humans had ever discovered. What should I tell them? Amy asked. Keep it simple, Jake said. Tell them we're explorers from Earth, and we come in peace. Amy composed the message and sent it toward the alien fleet. The signal traveled through space at the speed of light, reaching the Zephyrian ships in less than a minute. On the bridge of the Cosmic Dominion, Telvis looked up from his station with surprise. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown ship, he announced. What does it say? Zixtel asked. Telvis listened to the translation coming through his headset. They claim to be explorers from a place called Earth. They say, they come in peace. Zixtel laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. Earth? Never heard of it. And peace? He laughed again. Every species says they come in peace until we show them our weapons. The commander walked to the center of the bridge and activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Commander Zixtel. We have contact with an unknown vessel. Prepare for standard first contact procedures. Across the Zephyrian fleet, weapon systems came online and shields powered up. For the Zephyrian Empire, first contact always followed the same pattern. They would demand immediate surrender, and if the other species refused, they would destroy a few ships as an example. Most civilizations chose to surrender after seeing what Zephyrian weapons could do. On the Liberty's edge, Lisa Parker watched her instruments with growing alarm. Captain, the alien ships are powering up their weapons, she reported. Energy. Readings are going through the roof. Jake felt his stomach tighten. This was not how he had hoped first contact would go. Amy, send another message. Tell them we don't want to fight. Amy quickly composed and sent another peaceful message, but there was no response from the alien fleet. Instead, the largest ship began moving toward them, followed by a dozen smaller vessels. Captain, Sam said from the navigation station, they're surrounding us. We need to make a decision. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. These people had volunteered for a dangerous mission, knowing they might never see Earth again. Now they were facing an alien fleet that seemed determined to start a fight. Jake had hoped to avoid this situation, but his ship carried more than just exploration equipment. Hidden beneath the Liberty's Edge's innocent exterior were weapons and defenses that represented humanity's most advanced technology. Lisa, what's the status of our special systems? Jake asked quietly. Lisa checked her readings carefully before answering. All systems are ready, Captain. We can activate them at any time. Amy, one more message, Jake said. Tell them that we don't want to fight, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Amy sent the message, but again there was no response. Instead, the lead alien ship moved closer and began charging what looked like a massive weapon. Jake realized that peaceful contact was no longer possible. These aliens had decided that humans were enemies, and they were preparing to attack. All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. Prepare for combat. This is not a drill. Around him, his crew began activating systems that had been hidden since they left Earth. The Liberty's Edge was about to show the galaxy that humans were not as helpless as they appeared. The Liberty's Edge began to change. Captain Jake Morrison watched his view screen as metal panels slid across the ship's hull, revealing the true nature of their vessel. What had looked like a simple mining ship moments before was transforming into something completely different. Armor plating deployed, Lisa Parker announced from her engineering station. Her fingers danced across the control panels as she brought online systems that had been sleeping for months. Weapon ports are opening. Fusion cores are coming to full power. On the bridge of the Cosmic Dominion, Commander Zixtel stared, his sensors in disbelief. The small human ship was changing before his eyes. Energy readings that had been normal for a civilian vessel were now climbing to levels that matched his own battlecruiser. "That's impossible," Teldus whispered from the sensor station. "A ship that size cannot generate that much power." Zixtel activated his communication system. "Admiral Korthvin, you need to see this." 3 sectors away, Admiral Korthvin was watching the same readings on his own screens. The massive Zephyrian admiral had conquered 47 star systems in his career, but he had never seen anything like this. Ships did not simply transform from civilian vessels into warships. Technology like that was beyond anything the Zephyrian Empire possessed. Analysis. Admiral Korthvin demanded from his science officer. "Unknown, sir," the officer replied nervously. "The power readings suggest they have at least 3 fusion reactors, but our scans show the ship is too small to hold even one reactor that size." Admiral Korthvain's 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the data. Either the humans had technology, far beyond what the Empire understood, or this was some kind of trick. Either way, he would not let a single small ship challenge the might of the Zephyrian fleet. "All ships, prepare to fire," Admiral Korthvin ordered. "Target the human vessel." On the Liberty's edge, Amy Johnson was desperately trying to establish contact with other ships in the alien fleet. She had detected over 30 vessels surrounding them, and she hoped at least one of them might be willing to listen to reason. "I'm getting responses from some of the smaller ships," Amy reported to Captain Morrison. "A few of them seem confused about why we're being attacked." "Keep trying," Jake told her. "Maybe we can find someone reasonable to talk to." Sam Rodriguez was plotting escape routes on his navigation computer, but the situation looked hopeless. The alien ships had surrounded them in a perfect sphere, with no gaps large enough for the Liberty's edge to slip through. Even with their enhanced engines, they would not be able to outrun the entire fleet. "Captain," Lisa called out from engineering, "I'm reading massive energy buildup from the lead alien ship." "They're preparing to fire." Jake made his decision. "Activate all defensive systems. Bring the quantum shields online." Lisa's hands moved across her controls, activating technology that represented 20 years of human research and development. The Liberty's Edge had been chosen for this mission not just because it looked harmless, but because it could carry experimental systems that had never been tested in real combat. Around the human ship, space itself began to shimmer as the quantum shields came online. A technology worked by creating a barrier that existed in multiple dimensions at once, making it nearly impossible for conventional weapons to penetrate. "Commander," Zixtel watched in amazement as energy fields appeared around the human ship. The readings his sensors were giving him made no sense. The shields operated on principles that Zephyrian science could not explain. "Fire warning shots," Zixtel ordered. "Let's see how strong those shields really are." The Cosmic Dominion's forward weapons lit up the darkness of space as they fired. Plasma bolts that could melt through the hull of any known ship struck the Liberty's Edge's shields and simply disappeared, absorbed by the quantum barriers, as if they had never existed. "Direct hits, no damage," Telvis reported, his voice filled with shock. On the human ship, Jake felt a moment of relief. The shields were working exactly as the scientists on Earth had promised, but he knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would not be satisfied with warning shots for very long. "Amy, send one final message," Jake ordered. "Tell them that we don't want to fight, but we will defend ourselves." Amy quickly transmitted the message, but the response was not what they hoped for. Instead of a reply, every weapon on every ship in the alien fleet began charging at once. Admiral Korthvin had seen enough. Whatever technology the humans possessed, it would not save them from the combined firepower of his entire fleet. All ships opened fire. Destroy that vessel. Space erupted. In light and energy, as 30 Zephyrian warships fired at once. Plasma cannons, energy beams, and particle weapons all converged on the Liberty's edge, in a display of destructive power that could have leveled an entire city. The human ship disappeared in a ball of fire and energy that lasted for nearly a minute. When the light faded, Commander Zixtal expected to see nothing but debris floating in space. Instead, the Liberty's edge emerged from the explosion, completely undamaged, its shield still shimmering around it. "Report," Admiral Korthvan demanded over the communication system. "No damage to the target," Commander Zixtal replied, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Sir, our combined firepower should have vaporized that ship. Their shields absorbed everything." On the Liberty's edge, Lisa Parker was monitoring the shield generators with growing excitement. "Captain, the quantum barriers are holding perfectly. The alien weapons can't even touch us." Jake nodded, but he knew they could not just hide behind their shields forever. The aliens would keep firing until they found a way through, or until the Liberty's edge ran out of power. It was time to show them that humans could fight back. "Lisa, bring the phase cannons online," Jake ordered. "Are you sure, Captain?" Lisa asked. "Once we fire back, there's no going back to peaceful contact." Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. They had tried peaceful communication, but the aliens had responded with overwhelming force. Now humanity had to defend itself. "Do it," Jake said firmly. Lisa activated weapon systems that had been built in secret facilities on Earth. The phase cannons used technology that could shift the frequency of energy beams, making them nearly impossible to defend against. As far as human scientists knew, no other species in the galaxy had developed anything like them. The Liberty's edge fired its first shot, a blue beam of energy that struck the nearest Zephyrian cruiser. The beam passed straight through the alien ship's shields, as if they were not there, striking the hull and causing a massive explosion. Commander Zixtal watched in horror as one of his escort ships lost power and began drifting helplessly through space. The human weapon had somehow bypassed their shields completely. "How is that possible?" Telvas asked, staring at his instruments. Before Zixtal could answer, the human ship fired again. Another Zephyrian vessel was hit, its engines exploding. In a shower of sparks and debris, Admiral Korthvan received the reports from his fleet commanders with growing alarm. 2 of his ships had been disabled by weapons that operated on principles his scientists did not understand. The humans were not just defending themselves. They were fighting back with technology that was beyond anything the Zephyrian Empire possessed. "All ships maintain distance," Admiral Korthvan ordered. "Do not approach the human vessel until we understand what we're dealing with." On the Liberty's edge, Captain Morrison made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. He activated a communication system that had been hidden in the ship's hull, sending a quantum-encrypted message toward Earth. "This is Captain Morrison of the Liberty's Edge," he spoke into the transmitter. "First contact has turned hostile. Requesting immediate support. Activating Contingency 7. The message traveled through space faster than light, using quantum entanglement technology that the Zephyrians could not detect or intercept. In less than an hour, it would reach Earth and trigger protocols that had been prepared for exactly this situation. The battle for humanity's place in the galaxy was about to begin. 3 hours had passed since Captain Morrison sent his message to Earth. The Liberty's Edge continued to circle the Zephyrian fleet, trading shots with alien warships that seemed unable to damage the human vessel. Admiral Korthvan had ordered his ships to maintain distance while his scientists tried to understand the impossible technology they were facing. On the bridge of the Stellar Crusher, Admiral Corthvin paced back and forth, his heavy footsteps echoing in the silence. His officers watched their screens nervously as the small human ship continued to disable their vessels one by one. So far, they had lost 6 ships to the strange weapons that passed through their shields like they were made of air. Any progress on understanding their technology? Admiral Corthvin demanded from his science officer. None, sir, the officer replied, his voice trembling. Their shields operate on principles we have never seen before, and their weapons seem to change frequency with each shot, making them impossible to defend against. Admiral Corthvin stopped pacing and stared at the main view screen. The human ship looked so small compared to his massive fleet, yet it was winning the battle through pure technological superiority. In his long career of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Send a message to the Imperial capital. Admiral Corthvin ordered. Tell them we need the battle fleet, all in it. Meanwhile, on the Liberty's edge, Lisa Parker was monitoring the ship's systems with growing concern. Their weapons and shields were working perfectly, but they were using enormous amounts of power. Even with their advanced fusion cores, they could not keep fighting forever. Captain, Lisa called out to Jake Morrison, we're down to 60% power reserves. At this rate, we have maybe 2 more hours before we need to shut down non-essential systems. Jake nodded grimly. He had been expecting this problem. The Liberty's Edge was designed for exploration, not extended combat. They needed help, and they needed it soon. Any response to our message? Jake asked Amy Johnson. Amy shook her head. Nothing yet, Captain, but if the protocols worked, help should be arriving soon. San Rodriguez looked up from his navigation station with excitement in his eyes. Captain, I'm detecting strange readings. On the edge of the system, space itself seems to be bending. Jake turned to look at San's displays. The readings were unlike anything he had ever seen before, but they looked familiar somehow. Lisa, are those the signatures we were told to watch for? Lisa checked her instruments and smiled for the first time in hours. Yes, Captain. Those are definitely quantum distortion fields. Someone is about to decloak. On the Zephyrian flagship, Telvis suddenly looked up from his sensor station with alarm. Commander Zixtal, we're detecting massive spatial distortions throughout the system. Something is happening. Commander Zixtal rushed to the sensor station and looked at the readings. Space in 12 different locations was showing signs of severe distortion, as if reality itself was being twisted. What could cause readings like that? Before Telvis could answer, space in front of the Zephyrian fleet began to shimmer and warp. The distortion grew larger and larger until suddenly a massive human warship materialized out of nowhere. The vessel was 3 times the size of the Liberty's Edge and covered in weapon ports that glowed with deadly energy. Impossible, Commander Zixtal whispered. The human ship was followed by another, then another. Within minutes, 12 human vessels had appeared from empty space, surrounding the Zephyrian fleet in a perfect formation. The ships were sleek and deadly looking, with hull designs that seemed to bend light around them. Admiral Corthvin watched in growing horror as his fleet found itself outnumbered and outgunned by ships that had appeared from nowhere. How long have they been watching us? He asked his science officer. Unknown, sir, the officer replied. Our sensors never detected them. They must have stealth technology far beyond anything we understand. On the lead human warship, Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge watching the alien fleet with calm confidence. The New Horizon was humanity's first purpose-built warship, designed specifically for combat against alien threats. She had been waiting in the outer system for 3 months, watching and learning everything she could about Zephyrian technology and tactics. Admiral, called out Dr. Linda Chun from the science station. All ships are in position. The aliens appear to be completely surprised by our arrival. Admiral Sullivan nodded. Dr. Chun was one of Earth's leading experts on alien technology, and her analysis of the Zephyrian ships had been invaluable in planning this operation. Open a channel to Captain Morrison. On the Liberty's Edge, Jake. Morrison felt a wave of relief as Admiral Sullivan's face appeared on his main screen. "Admiral, are we glad to see you?" "Good work, Captain," Admiral Sullivan replied. "Your crew has done an excellent job holding them off. Now let's show these aliens what happens when they threaten humanity." Around the system, the other human ships were taking positions. Captain Ryan Davis commanded the Freedom's Call, a heavy cruiser designed for long-range combat. Commander Nicole White led a squadron of fast attack ships that moved through space like schools of fish. Captain Peter Jones controlled the Silent Hunter, a vessel so advanced that it could remain invisible even while firing its weapons. The Zephyrian fleet found itself facing an enemy that seemed to appear and disappear at will. Major Alex Turner led a squadron of small fighter craft that emerged from the larger ships like angry hornets. The fighters were so fast and maneuverable that Zephyrian targeting computers could not lock onto them. "How are they moving like that?" Commander Zixtal asked his tactical officer. "Those acceleration forces should kill any biological pilot." The tactical officer studied his instruments with confusion. "Sir, the fighters are pulling maneuvers that generate over 20 times normal gravity. No known species could survive forces like that." What the Zephyrians did not know was that human pilots used advanced protection systems that allowed them to survive incredible acceleration. The fighters also used eye assistance that helped them perform maneuvers no organic pilot could manage. Alone, Admiral Korthvin realized his fleet was in serious trouble. The humans had been watching them for months, learning their tactics and weaknesses while remaining completely hidden. Now they were facing an enemy that seemed to have answers for every weapon and strategy the Zephyrian Empire possessed. "Send an emergency message to the Imperial capital," Admiral Korthvin ordered. "Tell them we need immediate reinforcements. All available fleets." The message was sent, but Admiral Korthvin knew it would take days for help to arrive. By then, this battle would be over one way or another. On the new horizon, Admiral Sullivan was coordinating with her fleet commanders. "Dr. Chun, what's the status of our stealth systems?" "All ships remain invisible to their sensors," Dr. Chun replied. "Our quantum cloaking technology is working perfectly. They can only see us when we choose to be seen." Admiral Sullivan smiled. Humanity had spent decades developing technology specifically designed to counter alien threats. While the Zephyrians had focused on building bigger and more powerful ships, humans had revolutionized the basic principles of space warfare. "Captain Davis, show them what the Freedom's Call can do." Admiral Sullivan ordered. Captain Ryan Davis acknowledged the order and targeted one of the larger Zephyrian cruisers. His ship's main weapon was a phase cannon similar to the one on the Liberty's Edge, but much more powerful. The beam that struck the alien ship was so intense that it passed completely through the vessel's hull, disabling it without destroying it. Commander Nicole White's fast attack squadron began darting between the Zephyrian ships, firing precise shots that disabled weapons and engines while leaving the crew compartments intact. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, as if they were all controlled by a single mind. The truth was that human ships used quantum communication systems that allowed instant coordination across vast distances, while the Zephyrians relied on radio signals that took seconds to travel between ships. Human vessels could communicate instantaneously through quantum entanglement. Admiral Korthvin watched his fleet being systematically disabled by an enemy he could barely understand. The humans were not trying to destroy his ships. They were taking them apart piece by piece with surgical precision. It was a display of technological superiority unlike anything he had ever witnessed. "Admiral," his communication officer called. "Out. The humans are sending us a message." Admiral Sullivan's voice came through the Zephyrian communication system with crystal clarity. "Admiral Korthvin, this is Admiral Sullivan of the human fleet. We offer you one chance to withdraw peacefully. We have no desire for conquest, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." Admiral Korthvin stared at the communication panel. The humans were offering him mercy after demonstrating that they could destroy his entire fleet. It was a gesture of strength that impressed him despite himself. But the Zephyrian Empire had never retreated from primitives before, and Admiral Korthvin's pride would not let him be the first. Admiral Korthvin stood silent on his bridge for long minutes, staring at the human ships that surrounded his fleet. His officers waited nervously for his decision, knowing that their lives depended on what he chose to do next. The Zephyrian Empire had built its reputation on never backing down from any enemy, no matter how powerful they seemed. "All ships, prepare for battle," Admiral Korthvin finally announced. "We will not surrender to primitives." On the new horizon, Admiral Sullivan received the Zephyrian response with sadness, but not surprise. She had hoped the aliens would choose wisdom over pride, but she had prepared for this possibility. "All ships, the Zephyrians have chosen to fight," Admiral Sullivan announced to her fleet. "Remember, we defend ourselves, but we do not become monsters. Disable their ships when possible. Destroy them only when necessary." Captain Morrison on the Liberty's Edge watched as the human fleet prepared for battle. His small ship had started this conflict, but now he was watching the future of human-alien relations being decided by forces beyond his control. "Captain," Lisa Parker called out from engineering, "Admiral Sullivan is sending us new power routing instructions. She wants us to link our systems with the rest of the fleet." Jake nodded and gave Lisa permission to make the connection. Suddenly, the Liberty's Edge was no longer fighting alone. Its systems synchronized with the other human ships, creating a network of vessels that could share power, information, and targeting data instantly. The Zephyrian fleet attacked first, launching everything they had at the human ships. Plasma, cannons, missile swarms, and energy beams filled space with deadly light. But the human vessels moved like dancers, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be at any given moment. Commander Zixtal watched in amazement as the human ships avoided his fleet's attacks with impossible precision. It was as if they could predict where every shot would be fired before the Zephyrians even pulled their triggers. "How are they doing that?" Teldas asked from the sensor station. "They're connected," Commander Zixtal realized. "Somehow, all their ships are working as one unit. They share information faster than our computers can process it." What the Zephyrians could not understand was that human ships used quantum entanglement for communication, while alien vessels relied on radio signals that took time to travel between ships. Human computers could share data instantaneously across any distance. Captain Ryan Davis on the Freedom's call demonstrated the true power of human coordination. His ship appeared to be in 3 different places at once, using holographic projectors to confuse Zephyrian targeting systems while his real vessel fired from unexpected angles. Multiple contacts on the same ship, the Zephyrian tactical officer reported to Admiral Korthvin. "Sir, we can't tell which one is real." Admiral Korthvin growled in frustration. Every advantage his fleet should have had was being neutralized by human technology he could not understand. "Focus fire on all the images. One of them has to be real." The Zephyrian fleet concentrated their weapons on Captain Davis's ship, but the beams passed harmlessly through 2 of the 3 images. The real Freedom's Call fired back with weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Engineer Tony Martinez on the Freedom's Call was controlling the ship's frequency-shifting cannons. These weapons could change their energy patterns several times per second, making it nearly impossible for enemy shields to adapt to them. "Direct hit on their lead cruiser," Tony reported to Captain Davis. "Their shields couldn't adjust fast enough to our frequency changes." The Zephyrian cruiser lost power and began drifting helplessly through space, its weapon systems completely disabled. Tony's weapons had found the exact frequency needed to penetrate their shields, then switched to a different frequency before the aliens could adapt. Commander Nicole White led her squadron of fast attack ships in a devastating assault on the Zephyrian formation. Her ships moved in patterns that looked random, but were actually carefully calculated to maximize confusion among the enemy. "Squadron leaders, execute pattern Delta 7, Commander White ordered." Her ships suddenly scattered in all directions, moving so fast that Zephyrian gunners could not track them. Then, just as suddenly, they all converged on a single target from different angles, overwhelming its defenses before disappearing again. The Zephyrians had never faced tactics like these. In every battle they had fought before, enemy ships moved in predictable formations that could be countered with standard strategies. But human ships seemed to operate by completely different rules. Admiral, the Zephyrian communication officer, called out, "We're receiving reports from all sector commanders. The human ships are impossible to target effectively. They move like they know what we're going to do before we do it." Admiral Korthvan was beginning to understand that he was not just facing superior technology, but an entirely different way of thinking about space combat. The humans fought as individuals who worked together perfectly, while his fleet relied on rigid formations and predictable tactics. Captain Peter Jones on the Silent Hunter demonstrated another aspect of human superiority. His ship could remain completely invisible even while firing its weapons, using advanced stealth technology that bent light and energy around the vessel. "Sir, we're being hit by weapons fire, but we can't see where it's coming from," Commander Zixtal reported to Admiral Korthvan. "Impossible," Admiral Korthvan replied. "No ship can fire while cloaked. The energy discharge would make them visible." But human stealth technology worked on principles the Zephyrians had never discovered. A Silent Hunter could redirect its weapon's energy signatures into other dimensions, making the ship invisible to any known detection system. Dr. Linda Chun on the New Horizon was coordinating the scientific aspects of the battle. Her research team had spent months studying Zephyrian technology, and now they were using that knowledge to devastating effect. "Admiral Sullivan, I'm detecting a weakness in their shield generators," Dr. Chun reported. "If we hit them with a specific frequency at exactly the right moment, we can cause a cascade failure." Admiral Sullivan nodded. "Send the targeting data to all ships. Let's end this quickly." The human fleet suddenly focused all their fire on a single Zephyrian battleship. Their weapons struck the alien vessel's shields at precisely the same moment, using the exact frequency Dr. Chun had calculated. The shields collapsed instantly, leaving the ship defenseless. But instead of destroying the helpless vessel, the human ships held their fire. Admiral Sullivan opened a communication channel to the disabled ship. "Zephyrian vessel, your shields are down and your weapons are offline. Surrender now, and your crew will not be harmed." A gesture of mercy in the middle of battle shocked the Zephyrian crews. In their culture, disabled enemies were always destroyed to prevent them from fighting again later. The idea of sparing a defeated opponent was foreign to them. Admiral Korthvan realized that his fleet was completely outmatched. The humans were not just winning the battle. They were doing it while showing mercy to their enemies. It was a demonstration of strength and moral superiority that left him speechless. But the Zephyrian Empire had one last weapon, one that they had never used in battle before. Admiral Korthvan activated his emergency communication system and sent a coded message to his flagship's weapons control center. "Prepare the Planet Killer beam," he ordered quietly. The Planet Killer was a weapon of absolute destruction, designed to crack open entire worlds. It had been installed on the Stellar Crusher as a last resort, meant to be used only when facing extinction. Admiral Korthvan had decided that the human threat was serious enough to justify its use. Admiral, his weapons officer replied, "The planet killer requires 10 minutes to charge. Are you certain you want to use it?" Admiral Korthvan looked at the human ships that continued to disable his fleet with surgical precision. These aliens had technology that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. If they were allowed to return to their home world, they might build a fleet that could challenge the entire Zephyrian Empire. "Charge the weapon," Admiral Korthvan confirmed. "We end this now." On the new horizon, Dr. Chan's instruments detected the massive energy buildup on the Zephyrian flagship. Her face went pale as she realized what the aliens were preparing to do. "Admiral Sullivan, they're charging some kind of super weapon. Energy readings are off the scale." Admiral Sullivan felt a chill run down her spine. She had hoped the battle could end without anyone being killed, but it seemed the Zephyrians preferred mutual destruction to surrender. "All ships, prepare defensive positions," Admiral Sullivan ordered. "It looks like they want to see what our best technology can really do." The Stellar Crusher's planet killer weapon reached full charge, its massive energy beam crackling with enough power to destroy entire worlds. Admiral Korthvan stood on his bridge, his hand hovering over the firing control. Around him, his officers watched in tense silence as their leader prepared to use the most destructive weapon in the Zephyrian arsenal. "Fire," Admiral Korthvan commanded. The beam that erupted from the Zephyrian flagship was like a lance of pure destruction. It tore through space toward the human fleet, carrying enough energy to crack open planets and boil away oceans. The weapon had never been used in actual combat before, but its designers had promised it could destroy anything it touched on the new horizon. Admiral Sullivan watched the approaching beam with calm determination. She had hoped it would not come to this, but humanity had prepared for even this possibility. "Dr. Chun, activate the mirror protocol." Admiral Sullivan ordered. Dr. Linda Chun's fingers moved across her control panel, activating systems that represented humanity's greatest scientific achievement. Around the human fleet, space itself began to change as quantum field generators came online. The planet killer beam struck what appeared to be empty space between the human ships and simply stopped. For a moment, the deadly energy hung motionless in the void, contained by forces that the Zephyrians could not understand. "Impossible," Admiral Korthvan whispered. "Nothing can stop the planet killer." Then the impossible happened. The massive beam of energy began to turn around, reversing direction like light reflecting off a mirror. The weapon that had been meant to destroy the human fleet was now heading back toward the ship that had fired it. Commander Zixtel watched in horror as his fleet's most powerful weapon approached his own ships. "Admiral, the beam is coming back at us. We need to move." But the Zephyrian ships were too slow and too large to avoid their own weapon. The reflected beam struck the Stellar Crusher's shields with the same devastating force it had been fired with. The flagship's defenses, which had been designed to protect against enemy weapons, could not handle the power of their own planet killer. The Stellar Crusher's shields collapsed, and its hull began to buckle under the assault. Admiral Korthvan felt his ship shaking apart around him as the weapon he had fired destroyed his own vessel. "All hands abandon ship," Admiral Korthvan ordered, his pride finally broken by the demonstration of human technological superiority. On the new horizon, Admiral Sullivan watched the Zephyrian flagship break apart without feeling any satisfaction. She had wanted to avoid bloodshed, but the aliens had forced her hand by using a weapon of mass destruction. "Launch rescue ships," Admiral Sullivan ordered. "Save as many of their crew as possible." Captain Morrison on the Liberty's Edge watched human rescue vessels race toward the destroyed Zephyrian flagship. Even after being attacked with a planet-killer weapon, The humans were trying to save their enemies' lives. It was a gesture that would be remembered throughout the galaxy for generations to come. The surviving Zephyrian ships powered down their weapons and sent surrender signals. Admiral Korthvin, rescued from his destroyed flagship, found himself aboard a human medical ship where doctors worked to save injured Zephyrian crew members. 3 days later, Admiral Korthvin stood in the conference room of the New Horizon, facing Admiral Sullivan across a negotiating table. The Zephyrian commander had lost his fleet, his flagship, and his pride, but he was still alive thanks to human mercy. "Why did you save us?" Admiral Korthvin asked. "In your position, we would have let our enemies die." Admiral Sullivan looked at the alien commander with something that might have been sympathy. "Because that's not who we are. We fight to defend ourselves, not to become killers." Dr. Linda Chun sat beside Admiral Sullivan, her computer showing detailed scans of Zephyrian technology. The battle had provided her with vast amounts of data about alien science and engineering. "Your technology is impressive in its own way," Dr. Chun told Admiral Korthvin. "But you focused on building bigger weapons instead of solving fundamental problems. We took a different approach." Admiral Korthvin nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand that the humans represented something completely new in galactic politics. They had power that could challenge the Empire, but they used it differently than any species he had ever encountered. "What happens now?" Admiral Korthvin asked. Captain Morrison, who had been invited to the negotiations as the human who made first contact, spoke up. "That depends on you. We came out here to explore and find new friends. We still want that, if it's possible." "Admiral." Sullivan activated a communication system that connected directly to the Zephyrian capital world. Emperor Vextar himself appeared on the screen, his massive form filling the display as he looked at the humans with curious eyes. "So you are the species that defeated Admiral Korthvin's fleet," Emperor Vextar said. His voice was deep and rumbling. "But not hostile. My commanders tell me you have technology we do not understand." "We have different technology," Admiral Sullivan corrected. "That doesn't make us enemies, unless you choose to make us enemies." Emperor Vextar studied the human admiral for a long moment. In his 1,000 years of rule, he had conquered dozens of species and destroyed countless worlds. But he had never encountered a species that could defeat his fleets and then offer mercy to their enemies. "What do you want from the Zephyrian Empire?" Emperor Vextar asked. "Peace," Admiral Sullivan replied simply. "Trade, if possible. Knowledge. Sharing that benefits both our species. We don't want to conquer anyone or be conquered by anyone." The Emperor leaned back in his throne, considering the human offer. Reports from the battle had described technology that seemed impossible by Zephyrian standards. Ships that could appear and disappear at will, weapons that could not be defended against, and defenses that could turn any attack back on itself. "You could conquer us if you wanted to," Emperor Vextar said finally. "Your technology gives you that power." "Power without wisdom is just destruction," Dr. Chun said. "We've seen what that leads to on our own world. We prefer cooperation to conquest." Admiral Korthvin looked up from the negotiating table. "Emperor, I recommend we accept their offer. I have seen what they can do when they choose to fight. I would rather have them as friends than enemies." Over the following weeks, negotiators from both species worked out the details of a historic treaty. Humanity would be recognized as an independent power in the galaxy, with the right to explore and colonize uninhabited worlds. The Zephyrian Empire would guarantee safe passage for human ships through their territory. In exchange, humans would share certain technologies that could benefit both species. Dr. Chun's team began working with Zephyrian scientists to develop better medical treatments and more efficient energy systems. Captain Morrison returned to Earth as a hero. but he was more interested in planning the next exploration mission. The galaxy was vast, and there were many other species waiting to be discovered. Admiral Sullivan established humanity's first embassy on the Zephyrian capital world, beginning a new era of interstellar diplomacy. Captain Ryan Davis and Commander Nicole White led new fleets of human ships as they explored regions of space that had never been visited before. The news of humanity's victory over the Zephyrian Empire spread throughout the galaxy. Other species that had lived in fear of Zephyrian conquest began to hope that the balance of power might finally be changing. On Earth, the governments that had secretly funded the development of advanced space technology finally revealed the truth to their citizens. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they had earned their place among the stars through courage, ingenuity, and the wisdom to show mercy to their enemies. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of a new exploration vessel, watching stars that no human had ever seen before. The Liberty's Edge had been retired to a museum, but its legacy lived on in the dozens of ships that now carried human explorers to every corner of the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire, once the most feared force in known space, had learned to respect a species that fought with intelligence instead of brutality. Emperor Vextar often consulted with human advisors when making decisions about his empire's future. Admiral Korthven, his pride healed by human kindness, became an ambassador between the two species. He traveled throughout Zephyrian space, telling the story of the battle where a small human ship had faced an entire fleet and won through superior technology and unshakable determination. The galaxy watched and learned as humanity took its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as explorers and friends to any species willing to accept them. The age of peaceful coexistence had begun, started by a mining ship that had refused to surrender and a crew that had chosen mercy over vengeance. In the end, the greatest victory was not the battle itself, but the peace that followed it.